In the deep past, our kind rose up in the bountiful waters of our world, a near endless ocean filled with many bounties. We evolved into the waves, from simple disparate tribal peoples to growing realms of divided states, often in conflict. By nature, we were never a violent species. As we established our first community, civilization began to spread across the world we would call Atlantis. Our ancestors valued stability, peace, and knowledge. As we would learn in time, most intelligent life tended to live on land, in contrast to our aquatic nature, which is unique in this galaxy. It molded everything about our culture and lifestyle. We call this our era of ignorance, when we believed that all species valued peace and stability, such as we did. That if we encountered advanced species, they would have advanced beyond the need to engage in violence and warfare, as it was a detriment to a working society. We lived in a bright and open galaxy. Conflict began to fade from our world as our civilization advanced through the ages. Nearly a century ago, though, one of the planets in our system was destroyed by an unknown event. Many considered it a natural event, but Dr. Caius Bullius saw the telltale signs of malicious intent. His theories were never taken seriously and pushed to the fringe, and he was ended his career in disgrace as a conspiracy theorist. As our species unlocked the technology of faster than light travel, there was a grand split in our politics. Dr. Bibulus' ideas gained new traction among a portion of our population, and this divide became untenable, and they were given a chance to start anew on Haven, a sister planet to our own. This was a significant split in our society. Nearly a third of our population sought refuge on Haven out of fear, but it did not halt our advance to the stars under newly elected coordinator Tiberia Quirinia. Before we get too deep, I just wanted to say thanks for watching, and that currently more than 85% of my viewers are not subscribed. So please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, it really helps the channel grow. Alright, that's it. Back to the video. Our people would establish their destiny beyond the gravity well of Stellaris, our star. But our ignorance would soon be shattered. In the backdrop of this back and forth bickering, our scientists unlocked the secrets of a precursor species that lived in our region of space some millions of years ago, called the Baul, a strange plant-like hive organism. Cracking these secrets greatly improved our terraforming practices and technologies. We received word from Haven that new evidence to prove the destruction of the Divider was a direct and malicious act, in contrast to the mainstream belief the planet was destroyed in a great calamity nearly 2 centuries ago. After months of back and forth between our respective governments, the ruling council decided to humor our fearful neighbors. After much study, our scientists concluded that Haven was right. More to the point, Dr. Caius Bibulus was correct. The destruction of the Divide was a direct and malicious attempt to destroy our civilization. If not for the unique configuration of our world, we would have been annihilated. We pinpointed the source of the attack, a mineral-rich system. We could ill afford a second strike if one was planned. We shed our ignorance and entered the era of truth. Haven and the Atlantean Confederacy were now united. We found the homeworld of the attackers, a species called the Favorians, who had stripped their system of mineral resources to fuel a series of preemptive strikes against any signs of intelligent life. A summit was called, and our joint leaders, Coordinator Tiberia Quirinia and Governor Caesitia Bibulus, and the ruling council deliberated for several days on the Favorian question. Should we grant them amnesty or annihilation? We've been a peaceful people even in the galactic stage, but the galaxy was revealing its true face to our species. It was a dark forest filled with dangerous hunters. Peace can only be achieved when we were alone among the stars. We could no longer fear the dark. We annihilated the Favorian menace to the last, but they had one final gift to bestow. Their moon had been converted into a mass driver that could drive projectiles at nearly the speed of light, and the data indicated it had targeted Atlantis. While our greatest minds deliberated on the last gift of the Favorian menace, Grand Arbiter Tiberia Quirinia was sworn to a new government and swore the Atlantean Confederacy would stamp out the myriad enemies of the Atlantean peoples once and for all. The Grand Arbiter began to assemble her government expansion, the people of Haven were integrated into the Atlantean Confederacy, which was a boon for them as we could now terraform the world into a beautiful ocean planet and apply our vast resources to solve their housing and employment issues. Governor Quesatia Bibulus retired from public life to teach at a university on Haven and work as a writer. Meanwhile, many of the galactic powers began removing their embassies in protest of our higher calling. It was of minor concern as we began a military buildup along our borders and removing potential enemies internally. Literally overnight, a new society rose from the ashes of our ignorance. Our understanding of the universe had been forever changed. We could no longer abide our naivete. Galactic society was a dark force. We would have to be the supreme hunters or face annihilation at the hands of dangerous alien influence. Peace was only achievable when none had the means to rise up against us. This was our mission. Our scientists and military developed various countermeasures to defeat the final gift of the Favorian menace. Defeating this weapon was our top priority, and by 2284 we had succeeded. With one catastrophe averted, we turned our gaze to the eradication of our enemies. Even primitives had the potential to develop technology and threaten our sovereignty. So we annihilated them, wherever they were found. One of our first neighbors to reveal their true intentions were the Havudu Zan United Colonies, a powerful galactic empire that held sway over several galactic states and controlled the supreme Onatok hegemony. To counter their influence, we initiated maneuvers near their space to show we could not be cowed. But they were not alone. Another species, simply calling themselves the Chosen, had escaped from stellar prison and were attacking the galactic north, and it did not seem like those powers had the strength to resist. The Chosen would become a major galactic threat in time, but for now, they were a minor concern to the Atlantean Confederacy. Meanwhile, a new election for Grand Arbiter came in 2301, and fortunes had shifted, and Vivius Flavonius was elected to bring his vision for the Atlantean Confederacy to life. It was an aggressive stance, as he felt only a powerful fist could ward off our many enemies, and he would soon be tested as the warring factions of the Valens were united under a great Khan and would soon rampage across the galaxy. This would be the first great test of the Atlantean Confederacy as they faced the great horde of Khan Siga, son of Makan. It would be their finest hour, or it would be the final days of their empire. But there was only one path forward. The Valen horde had to be defeated, and the sovereignty of the Atlantean Confederacy had to be maintained against such xeno-aggression. If they were to purify the galaxy, they would need to prove themselves here. In the system Alphar, the first strike is made against the Valen horde. The Great Khan met defeat by our superior forces and was routed, but losses to our forces were significant. Quite significant. Celebrations were cut short though. The Great Khan had been defeated but not killed. The Valen horde did not relent, and continued to push forward. It fell to Admiral Publius Messinius to lead the valiant defense and recapture worlds that were currently occupied by the Valen horde menace. At task, the Admiral performed valiantly as he reclaimed the lost territory and even struck deeper into the newly annexed regions of the Horde. The might of the Atlantean Ascendancy had proven itself against one of the strongest forces in the galaxy. While the rest of the galaxy trembled, the Atlantean Confederacy rose to the occasion and showed that the Khan was not infallible. The Atlantean Confederacy had reclaimed their world, pushed out the invaders, and now were looking to see if they could strike even deeper against the Great Khan. But word would soon reach them of the death of this insidious Xenos. But still, vengeance was on their mind, and they plunged deeper into the realm of the Valen Horde. Why not take advantage of an opportunity when their forces were scattered, leaderless? Leaderless and scattered, the Valen Horde would have been easy pickings for the Atlantean Confederacy. But the Galactic Community, now freed from the menace of the Great Khan, could not turn their full attention to the threat that we posed. They considered us a galactic crisis, and a new war would soon be thrust upon the Atlantic Confederacy.
I address the Galactic Community with a grim message. Even though we have endured the conflict with the Great Khan and the Valon Horde, an even greater menace lingers in our galaxy. The Atlantean Confederacy has made it public that they wish to cleanse the galaxy of all sentient life that is not Atlantean. We must not let this happen. We must meet this threat with our valor, our blood, indeed our very lives, so that the future of this galaxy is one of peace and prosperity, and not of ruin and despair. Therefore, we must act swiftly to dismantle the Atlantean Confederacy war machine and end this crisis once and for all.
With that speech, the longest war in recorded galactic history was kicked off, as the entire galactic community declared war on the Atlantean Confederacy. Beset by on all sides, it would fall to Admiral Decimus Manatus to lead the valiant defense for the Atlantean Confederacy. There would be no recourse, no mercy. This was a battle for the very survival of the Atlantic Confederacy against the many allied forces of the galactic community. It was a vicious war, and one that would last perhaps over a century, perhaps even more. As their war machine continued to grow and become more and more powerful, they were able to fend off threats from multiple sides. And it was soon shown that the united forces of the galactic community were not enough to defeat the galactic power that was the Atlantic Confederacy. Battle after battle, they routed and destroyed the galactic community's forces. It was a demoralizing effort, but still, they had no other choice. If the galactic community did not succeed, they'd be purified. So they fought. But there was no stopping the Atlantic Confederacy war machine. Their fleets would fly over alien worlds and decimate them to the last, bombing them until there was no living soul left. This was their sacred mission. As much as the Galactic Community tried to defend themselves, all they found was destruction. Loss after loss after loss. Even with the bolstered forces of the Horde with them, the Horde that had civilized and had joined the community, they were still no match for the power of the Atlantean Confederacy. It was becoming increasingly obvious that the forces of the Atlantic Confederacy were far too powerful to be contained by the efforts of the galactic community. This war was not going in their favor. Not one bit. They were being defeated on every front, and losing planets in the process. In fact, the Atlantic Confederacy turned their efforts to the Fallen Empire, a race of machines that were caretakers of some lost, forgotten society. Perhaps it was the height of hubris to start a second war when one was fighting the whole galaxy. But, in the eyes of the Atlantic Confederacy, this was just a matter of cleanup for the rest of the galaxy. The Fallen Empire had technology and worlds that were valuable for their efforts, and so they engaged them and defeated them in battle, subjugated their worlds and destroyed the machines, began seeding them with Atlantean people to enjoy the fruits of their conquest. While the Galactic Community had focused their efforts on the Atlantean Confederacy, there was a more insidious threat that was harassing them in the background. Perhaps more than harassing, they were dominating them. This was the Chosen, a group that we had only heard of earlier in our existence, but now we're seeing as a galactic threat. They had consumed so many worlds, controlled them, eradicated so much life, and with so much of their efforts directed towards us, the Galactic Community was no match for the rise and power of the Chosen. The only ones that could defeat them was us, the Atlantic Confederacy. And soon, the galaxy was torn between two great powers, the Chosen and the Atlantic Confederacy. Both wanted the destruction of the other, the complete eradication of all life outside of themselves. This would be the final conflict for control of the galaxy. While the systems of the fallen empire were under direct control of the Atlantic Confederacy. The holdouts that were still in the ring world were far more powerful than expected. It was a siege. The machines would not give up their worlds without a fight. And the Atlantic Confederacy had all the means to do so. Time was on the side of the Atlantic Confederacy. The machines' days were numbered, but it did not matter. It would fight on relentlessly, without recourse. The usual tactic for dealing with these kinds of enemies was to simply bomb the worlds into submission until they were nothing more than craterless, lifeless hunks of rock. But these ring worlds were valuable to the Atlantic Confederacy. They did not want to damage them any further than the machines had already done so. So it would come down to an invasion of each segment of the ring world. This was a massive effort that would take years to complete, but it didn't matter because there was only one goal: achieve victory against the fallen empire, destroy the Xenos, and utilize their technologies to then destroy the forces that were arrayed against them in the Galactic Community. While they had been cowed, much of their forces broken, they were still a threat, if at least nominally. Every now and then, a small force or detachment would try to assault the borders of the Atlantic Confederacy. They were easily repelled, easily destroyed, but that was not the main threat. The main threat was the Chosen. They'd grown too large, too powerful, and it was soon seen that for the survival of the Atlantean species, they would have to dismantle and destroy the Chosen, or they would be overrun by their relentless numbers. There was a massive effort to create the largest invasion force in the history of the Atlantean Confederacy. Men and women across the Empire were recruited to join the effort. These soldiers were well trained, honed in the crucible of battle. Many of them had never lifted a weapon in their lives, but through the extreme training, psychic conditioning, and battle trance, they were prepared to destroy the Xenos automatons and defeat the fallen empire once and for all. The massive invasion force would soon gather above the ring world so that they can invade and end this threat once and for all. Once the threat of the Xenos automatons were behind them, they could turn their attentions to the Chosen and the galaxy, and finally bring peace and prosperity to a galaxy waiting for their ascension. The honor of pacifying and bringing the Irrobots to heel was given to General Surtur Opportunius. It was up to him to destroy the threat to the Atlantean Confederacy forever. What follows is a brief missive he sent to High Command before the final invasion began.
Grand Arbiter, the war against the wretched fallen empire continues apace. Our grand forces have touched down on the ring segment. They have designated the production unit. It is a paradise that is wasted on these wretched Xenos automatons. These new reinforcements will turn the tide as we launch perhaps the greatest invasion in known galactic history. The forces of the Atlantean Confederacy will know victory. The Xenos automatons will be eradicated, and we can turn our efforts to the Chosen. When our next communique is posted, it shall be word of victory in this sector. All praise to the High Council. All praise to the Grand Arbiter.
General Opportunus led the forces to victory against the Irrobots, the wretched Xenos automatons that had infested the galaxy for time immemorial. The fallen empire was on its last legs. There were still holdouts, but victory was assured. The grandest invasion force that had ever been assembled in galactic history, at least known galactic history, descended upon the final remnants and eradicated the fallen empire, a species that had reached heights of technology long before we even swam in the cold waters of our world. was now gone. It was a moment of reflection. This could happen to us. We would have to be vigilant. We would have to be strong. But the task ahead of us was assured. We would cleanse this dark forest of all threats. And in the end, the Atlantean Confederacy would reign supreme. The Atlantean Confederacy had entered an era of dominance over the galactic powers. But their greatest threat was a power that was from beyond even this universe. The Unbidden. The Unbidden had arisen from an unknown space. A place outside of this galaxy. Outside of this universe, perhaps. But they are relentless. And they had placed the interdimensional anchors in regions of space that were still controlled by the Chosen and the Galactic Community. There was no way for the Atlantean Confederacy to act. So they went to war with the Chosen once again, both to eradicate them, but to gain access to the hiding places of the Unbidden. The Unbidden were a great threat to the galaxy, and they had already shown that the Chosen and the Galactic Community lacked the power, strength, and resolve to defeat them. It was up to the Atlantean Confederacy to do the job that the rest of the galaxy could not. And once that was done, then the great work could continue, and peace would be found through bloodshed. No place was safe from the Unbidden. Their forces could reach anywhere, be anywhere. Their fleets were far larger than anything the Galactic Council could muster. Only the strength of the Atlantean Confederacy could match them. The Chosen hadn't made damage against the Unbidden, but they were losing strength. At terminal egress, the Atlantic Confederacy suffered a terrible blow.
Terminus egress is lost. I have failed the Grand Arbiter and the great work, but we have given these wretched Xenos everything we have and made them pay in blood, if these creatures even bleed. Systems are failing. I have bought all the time I can. I gave my crew the option to escape, but many have demanded that they stay until the last. Remember us, High Council. Remember our sacrifice, Grand Arbiter, and see us avenged sevenfold. I long for the waters of Atlantis and the seas of my ancestors.
While Admiral Decimus made this ultimate sacrifice, closer to home, a more immediate threat was found in the case of the Stellar Devourer, a massive creature that fed on stars. It was seen as a most imminent threat, and so a fleet was dispatched to deal with it. Even though they were at war with the Unbidden and the Chosen, this was seen as a high priority in case the creature would move closer to Atlantis and the interior systems of the core. That could not happen, and it would not happen. The fleet was able to silence it, and then our scientists were able to study its corpse to discover its secrets. Our species had long ago attuned ourselves to the psychic energies that course throughout the galaxy. In time, we'd even made a bond with something from the Shroud calling itself the Eater of Worlds. Perhaps it was a god, an entity, perhaps it was just another universe that was speaking to us. Whatever it was, we had attuned ourselves to it, and it had gifted us with many powers that some would consider unnatural. Their pact with the Eater of Worlds had borne fruit, and through it they were able to push back the Chosen, until their forces were over the homeworld of the wretched Xenos that had plagued the galaxy. Still, the Unbidden were a threat, but for now, they would relish in the victory over the Chosen, as their armies led by General Surtur would once again do what needed to be done to bring these Xenos to heel. The aliens would be no match for our well-honed psychic forces. This was a victory long in the making, and when the final Chosen laid down their arms, they knew they had been beaten, destroyed, and they were led to the work camps to be processed, and their species would no longer trouble the galaxy anymore. By 2462, a new Grand Arbiter took command, Grand Arbiter Gaia Enius. She was gifted by the Shroud and was considered a chosen one of the Eater of Worlds. Her power was unrivaled within the Galactic Confederacy, but it had always been a council was now deferring more and more to her foresight and profound supernatural capabilities. Many considered her a god, a living god, and in time, the council was dismantled, and she was named an empress, a divine being that would lead us into the grand future. In her wisdom, she allowed the High Council to remain, but they all deferred to her power. Her word was the final word. None would ever defy her. Indeed, she was beloved by all of the Empire. Her empire. Her coming would herald the end of the dark times, the end of the war. The Galactic Council was in tatters. There are very few species left that were even a part of it. Its halls were mostly empty. Most of the species had been eradicated, or cowed, or sent to the work camps to work until they were weeded out. But there was still some resistance. The Chosen were defeated, and the Unbidden were on the ropes. They had dominated for so long, but the forces of the Atlantean Confederacy had pushed them back, time and time again, until their anchors were destroyed. All that was left was to remove the final threats, and peace would reign in the galaxy once more. The Atlantic Confederacy would no longer have to fear the dark, for they had conquered it. They had broken the great strength of the Galactic Community, the Unbidden, the Chosen, and all other threats that had come against them. And all this was thanks to the divine will of the Divine Empress. Even when she was not with us, she was with us, guiding us to this very moment. All that remained of the Galactic Council was a small, unworthy empire called the Habentine Union, who were made of some type of creature. We didn't really care what these Xenos were, but they were the last remnant. They were the only member of the Galactic Council. Thus, they were the sole member and the custodian of the entire galaxy, or so they thought. The Unbidden were gone. Their last remnants had been pushed to the edges, and our forces were moving to eradicate them to the last. All that remained was defeating the Habentine Union, and the war that had started nearly 2 centuries ago would be at an end. It was a foolish war. The galaxy had no right to rise up against us. Perhaps it was natural for creatures to not want the destruction, but all they had done was delayed the inevitable. The inevitable rise and ascension of the Atlantean Confederacy. We never asked to become the caretakers of this galaxy, but when the Favonian species tried to destroy us with their mass driver all those centuries ago, our course was set. Our path was made. This was always our destiny, as was foretold by the Grand Empress. Her divine nature transcends time and space. She sees that which has been and that which will be, and sees that our galaxy will be ruled by us until the end of time. Alright, so I just want to take a moment to say thanks for hopefully listening to the whole thing or watching the whole thing. This is a different format I'm trying out. I still got to refine it, but I really enjoyed creating this. It was a lot of work. I think this is probably over, 14 hours worth of footage or something like that. But cutting that down to 30 minutes was great. Either way, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Alright, I'm out. Bye. See ya.